Of course, I have reviewed the Americanized story for all the potential issues you mentioned. The original version was strong, but by refining the logic, enhancing the emotional impact, and polishing the prose, we can make it even more compelling and viral-ready. Here is a breakdown of the errors and improvements, followed by the final, enhanced version of the story. Analysis of errors and areas for improvement: grammar and prose. The original text was grammatically sound. The improvements here focus on making the language more vivid, impactful, and better suited for a dramatic voiceover. I've tightened sentences, replaced common words with more powerful synonyms, and improved the narrative flow. Logical inconsistencies, minor but important for audience belief. The HR call, a call to an HR manager at 1:00 p.m. is highly unrealistic. It's more plausible that Alexandra would leave a frantic, urgent voicemail, and the manager would call back the next morning. This also adds a night of suspense. The apartment ownership. How did she buy the apartment without the family noticing changes in paperwork or payments? This is a crucial plot point. A single sentence has been added to explain how she concealed it using a P.O. box and mimicking the rent payments, making her foresight and planning more impressive. Accessing social media. How did she get into all their accounts so easily? While the genre allows for some suspension of disbelief, adding a small detail that she knew their simple passwords or used a master family email account makes it feel more clever and believable. Character names. The names are consistent and appropriate for a US audience. No errors were found. Repetition. The story structure is good, but some phrases like "I paid for everything" were used multiple times. I have varied the language to express the same idea in more compelling ways, e.g., "My salary was consumed. My paycheck vanished." The final, enhanced version. Here is the revised story with all improvements integrated. The content is sharper, the logic is tighter, and the emotional beats are designed to hit harder. I stood in the center of the living room I paid for and told my family I was moving to Seattle for a new job. Before the words finished leaving my mouth, my sister, Jessica, launched herself off the couch. "You're what?" she shrieked, her face contorting with rage. "You can't just leave. Who's going to support my kids? Who's going to pay for all of this?" My mother, Linda, advanced on me, a trembling finger aimed at my face. "How dare you think of abandoning this family? Alexandra, you know we all depend on you." After 7 years of silence, something inside me finally broke. "Then maybe it's time Jessica got a job and learned to support herself." I snapped back. "Because I'm done." That's when my father, Robert, a man built like a bulldog, crossed the room. He shoved me hard. I stumbled backward, the edge of the coffee table digging into my spine as I crashed to the floor. Before I could even gasp, he'd snatched my phone from my pocket, his thick fingers already dialing. "She's not going anywhere." He barked into the phone at my new employer. "She's refusing your offer." He hung up, leaned over me, his face inches from mine, and hissed, "You owe us. You try to walk out that door again, and I will knock every single tooth out of your head." From the couch, Jessica clapped slowly, a smug, satisfied grin spreading across her face. "Good job, Dad." I said nothing. I just absorbed the pain and the betrayal. But as the clock struck midnight, I packed a single suitcase and vanished into the night. What I did next didn't just cut them off. It systematically dismantled the parasitic world they had built on my back. My name is Alexandra Miller, and for 7 years, I wasn't a daughter or a sister. I was the family's personal bank. Their walking, talking ATM. I was the one who sacrificed everything so my older sister, Jessica, could live a life of absolute leisure. I'm 3 years younger than her, but I was the designated breadwinner for everyone. My parents, Robert and Linda, operated on a twisted logic since I was smart and driven. It was my duty to fund their lives. my sister's life, and the lives of her two children, Tyler and Megan. Jessica had married her high school sweetheart, Kevin, at 19. When their youngest turned 3, Kevin finally walked out, fed up with her refusal to get a job. Instead of facing reality, Jessica moved back in with our parents, declaring that being a single mom was her full-time profession, a title that apparently came with a lifelong allowance. Courtesy of me. She never worked a single day. She'd sleep until noon, watch reality TV, and complain about her struggles, all while posting selfies from the nail salon with captions like "number self-care, paid for with my overtime." Meanwhile, I worked myself to the bone. I put myself through Ohio State with a computer science degree, juggling 2 jobs to pay for it. After graduation, I climbed the ladder at a tech firm in Cleveland, quickly becoming a senior software engineer. I earned a fantastic salary, but every penny of it vanished into supporting 5 people who saw me as an obligation, not a person. My paycheck was consumed by the rent on their 3-bedroom apartment, all their utilities, their groceries, and the gas for my dad's old Ford F-150. I covered Jessica's car insurance, health insurance for all 5 of them, and every emergency that popped up. New boots for her, a new cooler for dad, a stress-relieving spa day for mom. I lived in a tiny studio apartment across town, drove a beat-up Honda Civic, and ate rice and chicken out of a plastic container every day for lunch. I hadn't taken a real vacation in 6 years. The lifeline came on a Wednesday in March. A call from Seattle. It was Arrowverse, a titan in the aerospace and software industry. They'd seen my LinkedIn and offered me a position as a lead systems architect. The salary was nearly triple my current one. But it was more than money. It was an escape pod, a chance to have a life, to save, to travel, to exist for myself. I accepted. My start date was 6 weeks away. And then, I made the colossal mistake of telling them, lying on the floor, my back screaming in pain as my family celebrated my entrapment. They stopped being family. They became a problem I had to solve. That night, back in my tiny apartment, I didn't sleep. I paced, the rage burning away the fear. At 11 p.m., I called the main number for Arrowverse and left a frantic, tearful voicemail for Sarah, the HR manager, explaining that my father had forced the call and that I was in a domestic violence situation and desperate for the job. She called me back at 8:01 the next morning. "Alexandra," she said, her voice full of concern, "the position is still yours. We'll even move up your start date if you need to leave immediately. Just tell us what you need." After we hung up, I opened my laptop and began to execute my revenge. It was time to show them what happens when you push someone with nothing to lose. Phase 1. The evidence. I gathered 7 years of financial records, bank statements, canceled checks, Venmo transfers. I created an Excel spreadsheet detailing every dollar. The grand total was nauseating, nearly $800,000. Phase 2. The trump card. Here's what they never knew. A year ago, their landlord decided to sell the apartment. I had good credit, so I bought it. The deed was in my name. I had all the mail sent to a P.O. box and kept transferring rent money from my checking account to my mortgage account. To them, nothing had changed. For me, I now held the ultimate power over their lives. Phase 3. The digital assault. At midnight, I drove to their building and let myself in. They were all asleep. I knew Jessica's password was the dog's name, and my dad used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from their devices. I crafted the posts on Jessica's Facebook, where she curated a life of a struggling but glamorous single mom. I wrote, "Confession. Everything on this page is a lie. My sister Alexandra has paid for my life for 7 years. Today, my family assaulted her to stop her from leaving. I am a freeloader, and I am a fraud." On my dad's page, where he pontificated about hard work. I wrote, "I've been living off my daughter for years. Today, I beat her and sabotaged her career to keep her as my ATM. I am a hypocrite and an abuser." A similar confession went up on my mom's page. Phase 4. Cutting the cord. Back at my apartment, I logged into every account. With a series of cold, satisfying clicks, I terminated everything. The power, water, and gas disconnection scheduled for the next morning. The Comcast account for TV and internet canceled. The Verizon family plan, their 4 lines disconnected. By morning, their phones would be useless bricks. Health and auto insurance, all policies canceled. Effective immediately. Phase 5. The final blow. I printed 5 copies of a formal notice to vacate, giving them 60 days to leave my property. I also wrote 3 personal letters, my words dripping with the ice in my veins. To Jessica, the free ride is over. You have 60 days to become the parent you've only pretended to be on social media. To my father, I hope laying your hands on me was worth it, because you just lost your retirement, your home, and your daughter. Get a job. To my mother, you watched as your daughter was beaten, and you chose money over her. You are no mother of mine. You have 60 days. I drove back, slipped inside, and placed the eviction notices and letters on the kitchen table where they couldn't be missed. On top, I left my key and one final note on the fridge: your world gets turned off today. You have 2 months to get out of my apartment. You saw me as an investment, and the account is now closed. Check your Facebook. 3 hours later, I was on a flight from Cleveland, watching my old life shrink into a speck of light below. When I landed in Seattle, the tsunami of notifications was overwhelming. Jessica, Sasha, what the hell did you do? The power is out, the kids are scared. This is monstrous, Dad. You answer your phone right now. I will find you and I will drag you back here. Mom, Alexandra, please. We can talk. Everyone is seeing those posts. Your sister is a wreck. The fallout was a public spectacle. My old neighbor, Aunt Carol, texted me, "Sasha, dear, there are police here. Jessica is on the lawn crying and screaming about you. Are you okay?" The Facebook posts went viral in our hometown. Videos surfaced of my dad screaming at a Verizon employee and Jessica having a meltdown at the power company. Their public humiliation was absolute. Their desperation was pathetic. My old boss called to warn me that my father had shown up demanding my new address and that Jessica had tried to impersonate me to get my final paycheck. Within a week, their lives had imploded. After the utilities were cut, the apartment became unlivable. Jessica ended up in a motel until the money I wasn't sending ran out. My mom had to move in with her sister, and my dad was reportedly living in a men's shelter. Meanwhile, I was thriving. My job was a dream. I rented a beautiful apartment overlooking Puget Sound. I started dating a wonderful man named Daniel. I was finally living. The eviction went through. I hired a crew to repair the damage they'd left in their rage and rented the property out. I used that income to open 2 college funds for Tyler and Megan. They were the only innocent ones in this. Jessica never recovered. Her ex-husband, Kevin, and gained full custody after she spiraled into alcoholism. My parents still send hateful messages, calling me a traitor who destroyed the family. Sometimes, I'm asked if I was too cruel. Then I remember the feeling of my father's boot on my ribs, the sight of my sister's smug applause, and the cold indifference in my mother's eyes. They didn't see a person, they saw a resource to be bled dry. I didn't destroy our family. I just exposed what it had been all along. The best revenge wasn't watching their lives fall apart. It was building my own. My name is Alexandra Miller. I'm 30 years old. I live in Seattle. And for the first time in my life, I don't owe anyone a single damn thing. Story 2. When I got home, my dad got up and yelled, "You're 28 living in our house. No woman would touch you. No kids. No career. You're a loser." My sister scoffed. My mom texted, Emergency family meeting. Come home now or we're done with you forever. When my friends see you packing groceries, they chuckle. To be honest, being connected to you is embarrassing. My mother wept. You have 30 days to get a $75,000 job, or you're dead to us. No holidays. No birthday calls. Your name erased from the will. My brother said. Even my 8-year-old asked why uncle sleeps until 3 p.m. and smells like failure. Before I dive into the complete mess that became my life 3 months ago, let me give you some background so you can understand why this hit so hard and why what happened next was so incredibly satisfying. This happened 6 months ago, but I'm finally ready to share. I apologize for the formatting. I'm on mobile. Additionally, this is a throwaway account because some family members use Reddit. The problem is that everyone conveniently forgets that I'm a 28-year-old man who still lives at home and plays video games all day. I have a degree in finance from a respectable state university, not Harvard Business School, but also not a diploma mill. And I received a 3. The issue was timing. I graduated right into the economic mess of 2020 when everything went sideways and finance jobs dried up overnight. I had a 6.6 GPA and very little student debt because I worked retail every summer and saved every penny rather than spending it all on spring break trips like most of my classmates. In order to pay off my little debt and assist with household expenses, I worked at a sporting goods store for 2 years while applying for entry-level analyst positions. Eventually, I was hired for $46,000 to do loan analysis at a regional bank, which isn't a lot of money, but it's honest work with good benefits and genuine opportunities for growth. My parents claimed to be proud of my financial discipline and long-term thinking, boasting to neighbors about how mature and responsible I was being. I was living at home specifically to save money for a down payment on a house. Had about $34,000 saved up in a high-yield savings account, and was aiming for $50,000 before buying my first home. Or at least they did until 3 months ago, when everything changed in an instant. My sister Jessica, a 26-year-old woman, is married to Brandon, an insurance salesman who somehow believes he is Warren Buffett. She has a marketing degree from a respectable university, but she has never used it because Brandon supposedly earns enough money for them to live comfortably. My brother Mike is 24 years old, works in sales at a large electronics store, and lives with his girlfriend in an apartment complex that honestly looks like it was built during the Carter administration and hasn't been updated since. She drives a BMW X3, which she can't afford with their actual income, and she frequently shares Instagram stories from pricey restaurants and shopping excursions that cost more than I make in a week. My dad owns a small landscaping business with just himself, depending on the contracts he can get, 2 or 3 seasonal workers. He is constantly talking about his investment strategies and how he has built wealth through alternative methods, which I understand to involve a lot of cryptocurrency day trading and various get-rich-quick schemes he finds on YouTube. My mom works part-time at a medical office doing billing and insurance claims, maybe 25 hours a week. And it was doing pretty well for years, nothing spectacular, but steady income. But lately he's been more stressed about shifting market conditions, rising equipment costs, and customers wanting to pay less for more work. I was reviewing loan applications and credit reports at work last Tuesday afternoon when my phone started going completely crazy. Naturally, I assumed that someone was in the hospital or that there had been a serious emergency because I had 3 missed calls from my mom in 10 minutes, followed by increasingly urgent text messages. Danny, you need to come home immediately. We're holding an emergency family meeting and everyone is already here waiting for you. She sounded strange when I eventually got up from my desk to call her back. She didn't seem terrified like I thought, but rather almost eager in an awkward manner. The 15-minute drive home was extremely nerve-wracking, and I kept going over the possible outcomes in my mind. Someone died. Someone was seriously ill. There was a financial emergency. There was legal trouble. Someone was hurt. Did something happen to Grandpa? Just get here as quickly as you can. You have 20 minutes, or we're going to make this decision without you. Trust me, you want to be here for this." When I pulled into our driveway, it looked like a funeral or a family reunion. With Mike's red Mustang and Jessica's white BMW X3, both of which he clearly couldn't afford with his sales commissions. I couldn't think of any family decision that would need to be made so urgently that they couldn't wait for me to properly finish my workday and drive home safely. I counted 12 cars jammed into our driveway and parked along the street in front of our house. 26 family members sitting in a perfect semicircle around our living room and dining room. My uncle's pickup truck. Both sets of grandparents' cars. And cousins I hardly see, except on major holidays. Entering that house felt like entering a courtroom, where I was clearly the defendant. A single chair in the middle facing everyone else was the only empty seat in the entire arrangement. And when I walked through the front door, the room fell silent. All of the chairs from both rooms had been moved to make this arrangement. And people were sitting on the stairs on folding chairs that had been brought in from the garage. It was a hostile, uncomfortable silence, as if I had interrupted something very important. And everyone was irritated that I had finally arrived. My dad got up from his place at the front of the group, carrying a laptop computer and a thick manila folder. It wasn't the usual family gathering silence, where conversations just faded naturally. I've been to a couple of interventions for friends with serious problems, so I knew the setup right away. But that didn't make sense. I don't do anything destructive. His expression was formal and serious in a way I had never seen before. "Sit down. Danny, we need to have a very important conversation about your future. You're 28 years old. You're living in our home, eating our food, using our utilities, taking up space, and making nearly no significant contribution to the success and reputation of this family as a whole. Don't have any addiction or destructive behavior. What could this possibly be about?" Danny. My dad began opening his folder and removing what appeared to be printed charts and graphs. "What is he talking about? Your sister Jessica has built a beautiful, successful life with Brandon. They recently bought a $340,000 house in Maple Ridge and are already seriously discussing starting a family and creating generational wealth. I pay $400 a month in rent, along with my own phone bill, car insurance, and most of my own food. I also assist with yard work and household maintenance. Your brother Mike, who borrowed $800 from me 6 months ago because he couldn't pay his rent following a brief setback in his trading account, is starting his own investment business and has already made over $15.0 profit just this quarter from his cryptocurrency and trading strategies." I looked at Mike, but he was unable to look me in the eye. "You're working at a small regional bank making $46,000 a year, in what amounts to an entry-level position with no clear prospects for meaningful advancement, no girlfriend or romantic prospects, and no ambition to improve your situation," Dad added, his tone growing more stern and disappointed. "Do you realize how embarrassing it is when my friends and Brandon's coworkers see you working at that small neighborhood bank branch and ask me why my brother is stuck in some dead-end clerical job instead of actually using an expensive college degree for something impressive? You're actively dragging down this family's reputation in the community." That's when Jessica got up from her semicircle position. And that's when things went from uncomfortable to downright brutal. "I'm not in a clerical position, Jessica. I'm a loan analyst. It's a professional role that requires my finance degree. Loan analyst isn't real finance." She lashed back with apparent contempt. But Brandon clarified for me. "I'm not in a clerical position, Jessica. My girlfriend's little sister goes to school with some kids whose parents know you." And she asked why Uncle Danny always looked so exhausted and stressed out. Then Mike jumped in, finally looking at me. "That's just paperwork processing with a fancy title to make you feel better. Real finance professionals at real companies make six-figure salaries and have actual responsibility." My mom was crying now, but it was angry crying, not sad crying. The kind of tears that come with disappointment and frustration instead of grief. We have provided for you financially and emotionally for 28 years. Danny, I honestly didn't know what to say to her. It's like you've given up on ever leading a successful life. 28 years. And this is what we get in return. You were meant to be our success story, our evidence that we brought up our kids, but instead you're simply occupying space, going through the motions, and having no true desire or purpose. That's when my Uncle Bob stood up and opened the laptop computer he'd been holding. We've prepared a comprehensive presentation to help you understand exactly where you stand compared to your peers and what needs to change immediately. A PowerPoint presentation. They made an actual PowerPoint presentation about my life. I genuinely wish I was making this up, but I'm not. The title slide displayed on our big screen TV read, Danny's Quarter-Life Crisis. A comprehensive analysis of underachievement and required corrective actions. Slide 1. Income Comparison Analysis. A chart showing Jessica and Brandon's combined household income, 89美元, 000. Mike's projected annual earnings, 67美元, 000. And my salary 46. 000 highlighted in red as below acceptable standards. Slide 2. Living Situation Benchmarking. Statistics showing that 89% of college-educated men my age live independently, with a pie chart breaking down different living arrangements and a red arrow pointing to lives with parents labeled as Danny's current situation. Slide 3. Relationship Status Evaluation. An actual timeline of my dating history over the past 5 years with analysis points about why each relationship ended and what this indicates about my personal development and social skills. Slide 4. Financial Contribution Analysis. Detailed chart showing that I'm the only adult child still financially dependent on my parents, with calculations of household expenses and my inadequate contribution relative to my income. Slide 5. Professional Development Trajectory. A comparison chart showing career advancement timelines for successful family members versus my stagnant position, with projections showing I'll never achieve financial independence at current pace. 26 people. Aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, family. Friends sat there nodding along and murmuring agreement while they systematically destroyed every piece of my life with charts, graphs, and statistical analysis. But the real kicker was slide 6. The intervention plan and ultimatum. Daniel has exactly 60 days from today to secure employment paying a minimum of $75,000 annually and establish independent housing arrangements, or he will be permanently removed from all family activities, holiday celebrations, and inheritance considerations. This decision is final and non-negotiable. Uncle Bob stared squarely at me, with what I guess he thought was harsh love, but felt like pure animosity. We held a formal vote before you came today. Danny. It was unanimous. All 26 family members here agreed that you need this wake-up call to finally start living up to your potential. I sat there for what felt like forever, trying to process what had just happened. 26 family members had spent weeks, maybe months, planning this elaborate intervention. They'd created a professional presentation complete with research and statistics about why I'm a failure. Then they'd voted to essentially disown me if I don't meet their arbitrary income requirement in exactly 2 months. Does anyone want to hear my perspective on why I'm still living at home? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. We don't need to hear excuses, Jessica said dismissively. We need to see results and meaningful changes in your behavior. I'm not making excuses. I'm saving money for a house down payment. I have $34. 0 inches savings right now. I was planning to buy a place within the next year once I hit my $50. 000 target. 34美元. 000. Brandon actually laughed out loud. Danny, that's barely enough for a down payment on a decent car, let alone a house worth living in. That's when something fundamental clicked in my brain. These people weren't trying to help me or motivate me to improve my life. They were trying to humiliate me in front of the entire extended family. This wasn't an intervention. It was a public execution designed to make them feel better about their own problems. I stood up slowly and looked around the room at all 26 faces staring at me expectantly, waiting for me to break down. Apologize. Promised to change. Begged for forgiveness. And another chance. Instead, I smiled and said, "Okay, I accept your challenge. But when I succeed, and I will succeed, every single one of you is going to regret this day for the rest of your life." Then I walked out. No dramatic door slamming. No yelling. No emotional breakdown. Simply left quietly and drove away. I went directly to my closest buddy Tyler's place. He's been my best buddy since high school and knows my family well enough to grasp the dynamics. When I told him what had just transpired, his instant response was, "What is wrong with your family? That's nuts." Tyler let me rest on his sofa while I planned out my next move. Which honestly was very nice because his house is small and he's had his own life to think about. The first thing I did was start applying aggressively for every finance job I could find. But I also started thinking carefully about what I'd observed during that intervention. Something felt really off about the whole situation. Why now? Why such an aggressive formal ultimatum? Why the elaborate PowerPoint presentation instead of just having a normal family conversation about their concerns? I started thinking about the financial situations of the people who'd been most vocal during the intervention. Jessica's BMW payments had to be astronomical. Those things lease for $500 plus per month minimum. Given that Mike had only recently asked me for a loan, his investment profits sounded very dubious. And based on the stress levels and remarks I overheard, it was obvious that my dad's landscaping company had been having more problems than he had been admitting. I made the decision to conduct a thorough investigation into the true state of my family's finances, starting with Jessica's social media presence. Her Instagram account was a veritable goldmine of lifestyle inflation and financial irresponsibility, with numerous posts per week showcasing dinners at restaurants that cost her and Brandon more than $200 per person. The thing that didn't add up was that Brandon, who sells insurance for a local company, posted pictures of weekend getaways to upscale resorts and spas, shopping excursions with bags from Nordstrom, Kate Spade, and other stores I couldn't afford to walk into, and captioned them with phrases like, "Blessed life," "Living our best life," and "Thankful for abundance." I began looking into public records and information that is legally available to anyone who knows where to look. Even if Jessica were working full-time, which she is not, and their combined legitimate income couldn't possibly support the lifestyle that is documented on her social media accounts. Even good insurance salespeople in our area typically make no more than $60,000 annually. The BMW wasn't owned, it was leased at what must have been a hefty monthly payment. According to property records, they had borrowed over $330,000 to buy their $340,000 home with just a 3% down payment, which put them instantly in debt. Tyler, who works in banking, helped me understand some of the credit reporting information that is available through legitimate channels, without violating anyone's privacy or breaking any laws. We were able to see that Jessica and Brandon had multiple personal loans from online lenders, the kind with extremely high interest rates that people use when banks won't lend to them anymore, and that they had taken out a home equity line of credit less than 6 months after purchasing the house. Once I started paying attention, Mike's situation became even more problematic. His investment profits seemed to be linked to a cryptocurrency scheme that, after some research, I identified as a pump and dump operation. The $15,000 he claimed to have made during the intervention was, it turned out, money he had borrowed from 3 different family members, including our grandparents, with the promise that he would double their investment within 6 months. The most startling revelation, however, occurred when I went to my dad's company office to get some equipment I had left there after assisting him on a project a few weeks before. He wasn't there, so I ended up conversing with his longtime secretary as I searched for my belongings. Although she has been with him for 15 years and has always been quite cordial with our family, She seemed to be under a lot of stress and casually said that they had to fire both of their full-time staff last month. Is business really that slow? Sincerely worried. I inquired. Danny, it's not only sluggish. It's been more than 6 weeks since we signed any new contracts. In order to pay for necessities and keep the lights on, your dad has started bidding on current tasks at a little above cost. At that moment, I became aware of the pile of official-looking notices on her desk. Dérivé pas du envoi. Collection letters. And what seemed to be court paperwork. I could see enough to realize that my dad's company was having severe financial difficulties. But I couldn't read the specifics without being offensive. In my mind, the pieces began to fit together. My family didn't actually care about my accomplishments or growth. They all had financial catastrophes of their own and were in dire need of someone to place the blame on. I applied for jobs over the course of the following 2 weeks with a level of focus and intensity I had never experienced before. And I was able to secure interviews with 3 different companies. However, I also kept surreptitiously researching the true financial status of my family. And I found out that it was far worse than I had first imagined. When I happened to run into my cousin Tom at a downtown coffee shop, I had a revelation. Tom works as an accountant and does bookkeeping for a number of local small businesses, including my dad's landscaping business. We started talking, and after a little banter, Tom unintentionally revealed something that he probably shouldn't have. According to Tom, your dad has been reaching out to people to see if they would be interested in purchasing the company. But to be honest, right now, the only thing to buy is debt. How awful is it? I inquired. Tom appeared uneasy. Danny, I probably shouldn't be talking about this, but your dad is in danger of going bankrupt because he is 3 months behind on his business loan payments. The house has been remortgaged twice, and your parents are struggling to make even the reduced payments. That night, I called my Uncle Bob. He's my dad's older brother and runs a successful electrical contracting business. We'd always gotten along well, and he'd seemed genuinely uncomfortable during the intervention, like he hadn't fully understood what he was signing up for. Uncle Bob, can I ask you something honestly? What was that intervention meeting really supposed to accomplish? There was a long pause. Danny, your parents asked everyone to participate in a family meeting about your future. They said you were struggling with direction and needed support from everyone to help you reach your potential. None of us knew it was going to be so formal and harsh. Did you know they were planning to essentially disown me if I don't meet their income requirement? What? No? Absolutely not. They told everyone we were having a career planning session to brainstorm ways to help you find better opportunities. This was a crucial revelation. The majority of the extended family had been routinely misled by my parents about the true reason for the gathering. They had informed people that we were not having a hostile intervention with threats and ultimatums, but rather a supportive career development session to help me reach my goals. When I told Uncle Bob what had really happened, he became very upset. None of us consented to take part in that. Danny, I believed our purpose was to support and uplift you, not to intimidate and degrade you. I spoke in a similar manner with a number of other family members who had attended the intervention during the course of the following week. The recurring narrative was that my parents had lied about the reason for the meeting in order to persuade people to come. The majority of them believed they were attending a constructive family get-together aimed at assisting me in exploring my professional options. However, this posed a clear query. What had caused my parents to plan such a complex lie? When I eventually got a job interview that went really well, the answer became evident. It was a senior financial analyst role at a much bigger organization with a lot more responsibility and room for advancement. At first, they made me an offer of $72. Ling ling ling, which was still slightly less than the arbitrary $75. 000 threshold set by my family. I successfully negotiated a raise to $78. Ling ling ling, along with improved benefits and a company car allowance. All of a sudden, I had a job that paid well over $75. 000 a year. Just what my family had demanded. I could confront them again and force their ultimatum upon them. However, that didn't deal with the core issue and felt too simple. They used a well-prepared PowerPoint presentation to embarrass me in front of 26 people. They had deceived members of their extended family to coerce them into taking part to avoid accepting accountability for their own financial shortcomings. They had constructed a complex facade. It felt like they were getting away with it too easily just by getting the job they demanded. For their actions, they deserved to suffer some serious repercussions. At that point, I began formulating a strategy that would completely reverse the situation and give them a taste of their own medicine. I had time to thoroughly research my family's true financial status because my new job was starting in 3 weeks. Even my worst-case scenario was not nearly as bad as what I found. Not only was my dad's landscaping company having trouble, it had been functionally bankrupt for months. In addition to $28,000 owed to different suppliers and contractors, he owed $52,000 back taxes to the IRS. And he was 3 months past due on an $85,000 business loan secured by our family home and his business equipment. Due to late payments, the majority of his landscaping equipment, which was financed by separate loans, was on the verge of being repossessed. The situation at my parents' house was even worse than I had thought. When Dad's business was doing well 15 years ago, they had purchased the house outright. But during slow times, they had taken out loans against it in a methodical manner. After 2 different refinances, they now owed $190,000 on their mortgage and were 2 months past due on payments. With the bank having already started the foreclosure process, the financial situation between Jessica and Brandon was a complete house of cards that could come crashing down at any time. During the intervention, Jessica boasted about her $340,000 home. After less than a year of ownership, they had already fallen behind on their mortgage payments by $18,000. Despite having put down the exact minimum required of $10. Given their actual household income, when the $540 monthly lease payment for the BMW was completely out of control, they had taken out a $28,000 personal loan at 19% annual interest, owed $38,000 on 8 separate credit cards, and borrowed an additional $15,000 from Brandon's parents. Under false pretenses, Mike's business endeavor turned out to be even more pitiful than I had anticipated. By promising guaranteed returns of 200% within 6 months, he persuaded our 73-year-old grandfather to invest $9.0 his cryptocurrency trading scheme. In addition to losing his entire investment, Mike also lost an extra $3.000 of his own money when the inevitable crash occurred. Before anyone in the family discovered the scam, when he had taken out several payday loans to try to repay our grandfather while working double shifts at the electronics store. But this is what really infuriated me. They had spent months organizing a complex intervention to expel me from the house because I was allegedly the family's financial burden and source of shame, even though they were all drowning in debt and facing severe financial repercussions for their careless choices. In fact, I was the only member of the family with a sizable savings account, a steady job, and a well-defined plan to become financially independent. But in some way, I was the issue that required attention. An unexpected source provided the last piece of the puzzle. During a casual conversation, my dad's secretary mentioned that my parents had been routinely approaching different family members for loans for the past few months, always claiming the money was needed for short-term cash flow problems or business expansion opportunities. They already had a number of relatives who had lent them money that they would never repay. Your mother gave me a call. She said yesterday that she wanted to know if I knew anyone who might be interested in renting a room in their home. She stated that in order to assist with some financial difficulties, they were searching for extra sources of income. I at last realized the true purpose of the intervention at that point. They were in dire need of extra cash to help pay their mortgage. So they rented out my room. The purpose of the 60-day ultimatum was not to inspire me to make changes in my life. In order to make money off of my living space, they wanted me out of the house as soon as possible. However, without a moral explanation that would portray them as responsible parents rather than desperate individuals taking advantage of their own child. They couldn't simply throw out their adult son. In order to give the impression that they were assisting me, they set up this complex intervention scenario. But in reality, they were assisting themselves. My new supervisor informed me that the company was seeking someone to take over management of a significant client relationship that had unexpectedly become available while we were out to lunch to discuss my start date. The job paid a base salary of $98. 000 plus performance bonus. But it would come with a lot more responsibility and some travel. Throughout the interview process, you made an impression on everyone. It would put you on a fast track for senior management within 2 years, she said, adding that we believe you could handle the extra challenge. I took the job right away. All of a sudden, I wasn't just fulfilling their requirements. I was crushing them. 98美元, 000 base pay. A company car allowance. A client entertainment expense account. And a clear path to 6-figure income in 2 years. With the exception of Brandon, I was going to earn more money than anyone else in my family. And the majority of his income was an illusion funded by debt. In any case, Uncle Bob unintentionally gave me the thought that would turn everything around and offer the ideal setting for poetic justice at that very moment. About 2 weeks prior to the expiration of my family's 60-day ultimatum, Uncle Bob gave me a call. He had been considering the intervention and was growing more uneasy about the way things had been handled. Danny, after giving that family meeting some thought, I've come to the conclusion that something is wrong with the whole thing. Instead of threatening and degrading you in front of everyone, your parents asked me to encourage and support you. He was genuinely thrilled and proud of my accomplishments when I told him about my new job and the $98. 000 salary. That's wonderful news. Give your parents a call as soon as possible and tell everyone the good news. I intend to hold off until the deadline passes. Let them worry about whether or not I will truly fulfill their needs. Uncle Bob said something at that point that gave me a completely different idea for how I could respond. Your father approached me last week to request a sizable loan. You know, he claimed he needed $25. 000 to pay payroll and other necessary expenses because the company was experiencing short-term cash flow problems. Have you given him the loan? Not at all. He never returned the money I lent him 3 years ago. And I won't make the same mistake twice. But Danny, things must be really bad if he's so desperate that he's asking me for money. Uncle Bob has always been the most prosperous member of our extended family and owns a very successful electrical contracting company. It was a sign of extreme desperation if my dad was asking him for loans. What if there was a way to help them while also making a point about how they treated me? I inquired. What do you mean? I asked, outlining the strategy that had been developing in my head. While it was undoubtedly petty and cunning, it was also poetic justice, offering them a solution while addressing the underlying issue. Uncle Bob had been actively searching for real estate investment opportunities to diversify his holdings because his business was so successful. What if we came up with a solution that would save my parents' house and radically alter the power dynamics in our relationship? Rather than just giving my dad money that would never be paid back, I had intended to use my $34.0 savings as a down payment for a home. Uncle Bob remained silent for a while as he considered the possibilities after I said, "You've got business connections with banks and real estate investors. What if we found a way to purchase my parents' mortgage debt? Actually, Danny, that's a really smart business move. In order to avoid the expenses and difficulties of the foreclosure process, the bank would most likely be willing to sell the mortgage at a steep discount if they were in default and facing foreclosure." Over the course of the following week, we investigated the procedure and determined the financial aspects. Although my parents were in default and the foreclosure process had already started, they still owed $190,000 on their home. In order to transfer the mortgage and avoid the legal fees, delays, and possible losses associated with foreclosure, auction, and resale. The bank would probably accept $150. Ling ling ling. With Uncle Bob's investment capital and my savings, we could easily pay off the debt and effectively take over as my parents' new landlords rather than their son and brother-in-law. Uncle Bob, however, told me, "This is a nuclear option. Once you do something like this, there's no possibility of returning to normal family relationships. This will permanently change everything." Uncle Bob gave me a PowerPoint presentation about my shortcomings in front of 26 people, humiliating me. Then, based on outright fabrications about their own financial circumstances, they issued me an ultimatum. 2 months ago, normal family relationships came to an end. The plan's fairness and simplicity made it elegant. Through Uncle Bob's investment company, we would purchase their mortgage, which was a perfectly legitimate and common business transaction. Although they would be paying us each month rather than the bank, my parents could still live in the house. Given their financial circumstances, we would charge them fair market rent, which would be much more manageable and, in fact, less than their current mortgage payments. This is the most fulfilling part. Though, they wouldn't be aware that I was a part of the transaction until the deal was finalized and all the paperwork was signed. My mom texted me 3 days prior to my 60-day deadline. "Your 60 days are almost up. Danny, have you been able to locate employment that satisfies our requirements?" I didn't answer. I received a message from Jessica the following day. "I hope you're ready to express regret for your behavior during our family gathering. If you ask politely and demonstrate that you've learned something, your parents may be open to giving you another chance." In fact, Mike called me the day before the deadline. "Dude, just take any job and tell them it pays $75,000. Your salary will never be physically checked, and you can buy yourself some time to come up with a better solution." At that point, I realized they had no idea what was going to happen and had not learned anything from their own financial mishaps. Exactly 60 days after the initial intervention, the last family meeting was set for Sunday at 2:00 p.m. I drove a rental car instead of my usual beat-up Honda Civic and arrived in a brand new suit that I had purchased especially for the job interview. The 26 individuals were present, but the atmosphere in the room was entirely different this time. The atmosphere was one of smug satisfaction rather than the hostile anticipation of 2 months prior. They obviously believed they had won, and I was on the verge of conceding. My dad was clearly ready for my surrender speech and got up with his manila folder once more. "Your 60 days are officially over. Danny, do you have a job offer that satisfies the needs of our family?" I showed them the employment contract that was clearly visible on the screen of my phone. 98美元 000 base salary. Full benefits package. Company car allowance. And performance bonuses for a senior financial analyst position. I'll be starting tomorrow morning. There was utter silence in the room. Jessica's complexion turned white. Mike's jaw literally dropped. Many appeared perplexed, as if they were having trouble comprehending what I had just said. 98美元 000, my mother inquired, obviously taken aback. In addition to performance incentives and bonuses, in the first year, I should receive about $115, 0 inches total compensation. My dad was having a hard time processing this information. "That's great. Danny, we knew you could succeed if you just put in the right amount of effort." "No," I said firmly. "You didn't think I could succeed. You threatened to disown me and made a PowerPoint presentation about my shortcomings. You never had faith in my abilities." Jessica asked defensively. "You just needed me out of this house for your own financial reasons." "What are you talking about?" At which point I took out my own laptop and hooked it up to their TV, just like they had done to me 2 months prior. "Because I knew you loved presentations. So, I made one for you." Slide 1: Jessica and Brandon's entire debt-to-income analysis, including screenshots of her Instagram posts demonstrating purchases they clearly couldn't afford on their actual income. The title is The Real Family Crisis. a thorough examination of financial irresponsibility and deceit. The second slide shows Mike's cryptocurrency scam and the breakdown of the money he had stolen from our grandfather under false pretenses. The third shows Dad's business bankruptcy timeline and the documentation of his equipment being seized due to unpaid loans. And the fourth shows my parents' mortgage default situation and the foreclosure proceedings that were already in progress. What I still don't understand, looking around the room, is how you managed to convince 26 people to participate in humiliating me when every single one of you is in worse financial condition than I've ever been in my entire life. Jessica was crying now, but her tears were tears of embarrassment and anger rather than sadness. Slide 5. A detailed list of family members who had been approached for loans under false pretenses. Included dates and amounts. You have no idea the kind of pressure we're all under right now. Danny. No. Jessica. You have no idea what pressure is ambushed by your entire family and told you're a failure when, in reality, you're the most stable and financially responsible person in the room. Uncle Bob asked, Danny, should I tell them about the other recent development as he got up and took out a folder of legal documents? Uncle Bob then formally addressed the room, explaining that 2 days prior, my investment company had successfully purchased the mortgage on this property from First National Bank. My dad's face went white. What exactly are you saying? Bob, I'm saying that you no longer owe First National Bank $190. Ling ling ling. You now owe us $150. Ling ling ling. And we are your landlords. The previous homeowners had fallen behind on their payments, so we bought the debt at a steep discount to fair market value. You can't do that to us, my mother said, her voice trembling. But the good news is that we're only going to charge you $1, $300 per month in rent, which is significantly less than your previous mortgage payment. It's a perfectly normal and lawful real estate transaction that occurs thousands of times a month all over the nation. So the answer is yes. We can. And we did. We obtained a reliable investment property. And the bank was pleased to avoid the expenses and hassles of foreclosure. Now that she had finally realized the consequences, Jessica was crying. This is insane. You're destroying our family over money. I'm not destroying anything. I replied calmly. I'm resolving issues you caused. You wanted $75. 000 from me. My salary is $98. Ling ling ling. You desired my departure. I will be leaving this week. You wanted me to help the family out financially. I just gave you a rent payment that you can truly afford and prevented your house from going into foreclosure. At last, Mike was able to speak. Danny, what do you want from us? I said. I don't want anything from any of you. You made it very evident that unless I satisfy your capricious financial requirements, I am not genuinely a member of this family. Although I now greatly surpass those requirements, your actions have permanently altered our relationship. After packing my laptop, I made my way to the door. Hold on. Danny, desperately, my mother called out. This is something that our family can resolve. This is something we can resolve. I took one last look around. In your presentation, you were correct on one point. It was true that I needed to mature and achieve financial independence.